Let's go ahead and start. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Farm Business Management Benchmarking Competitive Grants Program, commonly referred to as FBMB. You'll hear that acronym used throughout this session. And this is the FY24 RFA Technical Assistance webinar. For this webinar will be recorded. Please be sure to make sure your microphone is muted. And for Zoom tech support, please reach out in the chat if you have any tech issues. Throughout the presentation, you may type in your questions in the chat box. And also, there will be slides available for recording for this conference, and we will make sure that they're posted after the session. Next, we want to go to the NIFA FBM program staff. Myself is Keith Harris. I'm the National Program Leader in this Institute of Youth, Family, and Communities. We also have Jessica Turner, our Program Specialist, and she also resides in the Institute of Youth, Family, and Communities. For today, we're going to cover the following topics. We'll begin with a NIFA overview. We'll also have a program overview, followed by requests for applications, sort of the details of our RFA. We'll also talk about the proposal evaluation process. We'll include additional information and resources for you to refer to, and we'll follow up with any questions that the audience may have. We'll begin with the NIFA overview. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture, also commonly referred to in its shorter term, in its acronym form, NIFA, is the extramural science funding agency within USDA's research, education, and economics mission area. NIFA invests in and supports long-term viability of agriculture. NIFA also provides funding and strategic leaderships for those programs that ensure groundbreaking discoveries in ag-related sciences and technologies. We want to make sure that it reaches the people who can best put it into practice. Let's go over the NIFA leadership structure. At the top of our structure, we have Dr. Manjit Mishra. He's the director for NIFA. And we also have Dr. Dion Toombs, who is our associate director of programs. Next, I want to show you the institutes that make up the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Moving left to right, we have the Institute of Food and Safety and Nutrition. Our deputy director for that area is Suzanne Suluka, and you can see the divisions that are part of that institute. Next, left and right, we're going to the Institute of Bioenergy, Climate, and Environment. The deputy director is Dr. Kevin Kephart, and you can see the divisions that are listed in that institute as well. We're going to the far right and look at the Institute of Food Production and Sustainability, where Dr. Cal Calavacharla is the acting deputy director. And of course, you can see the divisions that support that institute. And moving back over to the Institute of Youth, Family, and Community. Dr. Martha Ray Sauter is the acting deputy director for that area. And the divisions, as you can see, that is bolded, the Family and Consumer Sciences. That is what happens to be where this grant program is administered. The Farm Business Management Benchmarking Management Program, or FBMB, is in the Division of Family and Consumer Sciences. Next, let's go over a program overview. We'll begin with the legislative authority. This program is authorized under the Food and Ag Conservation Act, and it amends, or at least it authorizes the Secretary of Agriculture operating or acting through the National Institute of Food and Agriculture to make competitive research and extension grants to improve farm management. Now, we'll talk a little bit about FBMB and how it fits within the USDA priority area. This FBMB program is aligned with USDA strategic goals for FY22 and 2026. Goal number one, it is to goal number one of the strategic goals for USDA is to maximize the ability of American agricultural producers to prosper by feeding and clothing the world. FBMB also fits in goal number 4, which is to facilitate rural prosperity and economic development. FBMB fits in goal number 5, which is strengthening the stewardship of private lands through technology and research. And the FBMB program also is aligned with USDA's science and research strategies for 2023 through 2026. And that priority number 5, in this case, translating research into action. Next, let's go over the purpose and priorities. Now, keep it in mind, the purpose of FBMB is to improve farm management, the knowledge and the skills of ag producers, because we want to maintain and expand a national and publicly available farm financial management database to support improved farm management. Next, let's look at the goals. That is the primary goals and objectives of FBMB. We're looking for ways to demonstrate an ability to work directly with ag producers. We want to be able to collaborate with farm management associations and financial management education programs. We want to address the farm management needs of a variety of crops and regions in the United States. And in doing so, it should allow us to contribute to support the National Farm Financial Management Database. Next, let's talk about the requests for applications, the RFA. We want to look at that a little bit more in detail and perhaps point out even some of the more salient points for you to consider when you submit your application. We'll begin with the application details. This RFA is available online, as you can see the hyperlink below. Keeping in mind, the application deadline is February 7th of this year by 5 p.m. Eastern. We anticipate the program funding to be about $2.35 million. We're anticipating 4 to 5 awards, and the maximum funding per award, rather, will be $500,000 or $500,000. Some of the program's key information. This will certainly help you when you take this in consideration when you're in the process of beginning to submit your application, by being aware that the program code is FBMB, being aware that the program code is the the program code name rather is the Farm Business Management and Benchmarking. You'll need to look at the listing number, the assistance listing number of 10.319, the project type, extension projects, the grant type. These are standard grants, and the grant duration is generally up to 36 months for FBMB. Let's talk about eligibility next. Here's some things that keep in mind. Those that are highlighted in green, going from the letters of A all the way through I: state ag experiment stations, colleges and universities, research institutions, other research institutions and organizations, federal agencies, national laboratories, private organizations, foundations, and corporations, individuals, in any group consisting of 2 or more entities described in the subparagraph A through H. I'll leave that for you to read that in the RFA. So with the eligibility of the FBMB program, you can see that there's a wide opportunity or large opportunity for a number of different organizations to compete for this grant. And again, what is really important to us is that we are able to support this farm financial database, and getting as much data as we can in the database will allow us to do more farm management practices especially with the benchmarking activities related to the finances for certain crops and livestock throughout the country. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the project types. These are primarily extension projects. They address one or more of the following key strategic actions. We want to support informal education to increase food and ag literacy of youth and adults. We're looking for project types that will promote science-based ag literacy by increasing the understanding and use of food and ag science data, information, and programs. We look for the type of project types that'll build science-based capability in people so that they're able to engage audiences, enable informed decision-making. And continuing, the type of projects that develop new applications of instructional tools and curriculum structures. We want to be able to offer non-formal learning programs that increase accessibility to new audiences. We like to see these project types develop programs that increase the public knowledge and citizen engagement in leading actions that protect or enhance the nation's food supply. Now, here are some of the key documents that you need to have in your application. A project summary, an abstract, if you will. We'll be looking for a project narrative. We'll look at some of the bibliographies and reference lists that you include. We'll look for a data management plan. And you'll see the electronic application and additional resources. They're available if you go to grants.gov or Grants 101. And part 3 of the NIFA Grants Application Guideline, it contains details regarding the grants.gov registration process.
With the grant application process, I'm going to talk about the application and the submission. Applicants must apply to the RFA electronically. No other methods or response is accepted. When applying for the NIFA award, it's important to reference the version of the guide that's included in the specific funding opportunity of the application package. Next slide, please. Okay, so the steps to register. First of all, to obtain the application materials, you need to register. New registrants need to go to grants.gov and must register early on grants.gov prior to submitting the application. And we have links, hyperlinks on the slides where you can click to go to register. Step 2 is to download your latest version of Adobe Reader. Step 3 is to find the application. It's important that you apply to the correct funding opportunity. It's listed there, FBMB 010313. And you can search for the application on the hyperlink with the opportunity package. And step 4 is to assess readiness. Contact the AR prior to starting the application to assess the organization's readiness to submit the electronic application. Next slide, please. For further help and resources, grants.gov, there's online support, there's phone numbers and websites there. And I believe they're available 24/7 except for holidays. And key personnel and business hours are listed there as well. Next slide, please. I say the application and submission continued. A large piece of this is the project narrative, otherwise known as the PN. The project narrative must not exceed 18 double-spaced pages with 1-inch margins written in 12-point font. New Times Roman font, and up to 6 additional pages for figures and tables. The font size for the table should be no smaller than 12-point New Times Roman. Within the 18 pages, we want you to describe the introduction, plan of work, budget narrative, rationale, significant approach, and include objectives, methods, and timetable. The page limits outlined here ensure fair and equitable competition. Appendices to the project narrative are allowed if they are directly germane to the proposed project. Do not add appendices to circumvent the page limit. Next slide, please. So, plan of work. A description of the proposed project activities in the sequence in which is planned to carry them out. We want you to include techniques to be employed, including their feasibility and rationale for the use of the program implementation. We want you to add the expected program outputs that will generate short, medium, and long-term outcomes that are effective change or expand the national database of FBMB. And we want you to show the means of which the data will be collected, analyzed, interpreted, and used. Next slide, please. We want you to include details of the plan to communicate programming and the results to the stakeholders and to the American public. Please also include pitfalls that may be encountered and how they may be overcome. Also include limitations of the proposed project and a project timetable outlining all important phases and function of time, year by year, for the entire project, including, if appropriate, periods beyond the grant funding period. Next slide, please. The budget and budget narrative. There should be a direct relationship between the items in the budget and the budget narrative, as well as between the budget narratives and the objectives and activities contained in the project narrative. Every item in the budget must be justified in the proposal. The amount of detail depends on the nature of the project and the breakdown of the cost. Proposed budgets must not exceed $500,000 total or request funding for more than 3 years. Next slide, please. So this shows you a little bit of a breakdown of the budget and budget narrative dates. For the 1 year period of performance, the start date must be September 1st, 2024, end date being August 31st, 2025. For the 2 year period of performance, the start date must be September 1st, 2024, and the end date being August 31st, 2026. For the 3 year period of performance, again, will be starting September 1st, 2024, and the end date must be August 31st, 2027. Also, in the budget narrative, cost, personnel, travel, etc., are broken down and itemized rather than showing lump sums. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jess. Next, we'll go over the proposal evaluation process. NIFA uses a scientific peer review process, and that essentially means that we'll select reviewers for this review panel, and we'll, based upon their training, their expertise, and their relevant scientific or extension and education in fields that are directly taking into account the following factors. For example, proposals are first assigned for review to at least 3 reviewers with expertise in this proposed topic. The reviewers will produce individual reviews of each proposal and evaluating the strengths and the weaknesses. These written reviews are used to begin panel discussions with other reviewers serving on the peer review panel. And through these discussions, the peer review panelists, they come to a consensus on the final rating and ranking of the proposal. So again, we want to sort of emphasize here that there's going to be sort of a level of relevant, formal, scientific, technical education and extension experience. Let's continue on with the evaluation criteria. We want to maintain and expand the already established FBMB national database for producers of a variety of crops and livestocks throughout the multiple regions of the United States. We want to be able to establish or expand a collaborative farm management educational programs. We want to be able to advance data gathering and conduct research on cost of production, farm profitability factors, and farm policy. We like to develop, in some cases, expand the cooperation and data sharing among existing farm management associations and farm business management education programs. We look to improve the profitability and the competitiveness of small and medium-sized farms and ranches. And we want to also look at improving the producer's abilities to successfully manage their ag operations through periods of high risk, volatility, and financial stress. Let's take a look at the timeline. It'll take 1 to 2 months from the time that the request for application has been released. This includes the process where we're doing proposal, where there's proposal writing and planning and when the proposals are due. Then it'll take another 2 to 3 months that the proposals will be under review, and we'll do proposal funding notifications. And the next step is 1 to 2 months, which means we're going to sort of finalize the awards that are going to be made. So again, maybe just to repeat this important timeline for us here, 1 to 2 months after the RFA has been, until the RFA has been released, 2 to 3 months in terms of how long it's going to take for our peer review process to take place. And then another 1 to 2 months before the awards are actually finalized. So on average, a competitive program takes us about 3 to 5 months from the proposal due date to an award being made to an institution. We'll keep you updated as much as possible, and we certainly appreciate your process. Yeah, appreciate your patience, rather. Now, here's just an example of some of the previous awards, just to give you some indication of the type of proposals that have been awarded. We'll go to the next slide on this. I won't go through reading each one of the awards. We can go to the next slide. So, additional information and resources. Here are some resources to keep in mind here. There's the links for funding opportunities. You can see also the competitive grants flowchart if you're particularly interested in the timeline, a more detail of the timeline. You can also go to NIFA grant resources as well. That could be helpful in terms of when you build your proposal, application rather. You also have the NIFA policy guide. Also, some discussions or some insight on indirect costs, which always seems to be a very important consideration for institutions that are applying for proposals or applying for grants rather. And we also have a guide for preparation and submission of the NIFA applications. And if you want to have even more discussions here, you have the information on awards granted. So we have a number of different resources that are available to you, as well as the program staff at NIFA, myself, and Jessica Turner as well, or grant or resources. So, and if you have any questions, you certainly can contact Keith Harris, myself, that is. There's my contact information, as well as Jessica Turner. Her contact or email information is listed as well. And also, we certainly want to bring up our non-discrimination statement in this case. This essentially indicates that we are in accordance, that is, NIFA is in accordance with federal civil rights laws and the U.S. Department of Agriculture Civil Rights Division. It also indicates that we are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender, identity. And I just want to pause just a moment here. I want to give you a chance to read this document in full. USDA takes the non-discrimination statement very seriously. And in fact, USDA is certainly an equal opportunity employer, a provider, and lender as well. And ensuring that there are mechanisms or ways in which that if you find some issues with the process, there's ways in which you can contact us. Next slide.
That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you. So having said that, I think this affords us an opportunity to answer any questions you may have. There appears to be a couple of questions in the chat session or in the chat box, I believe. And if so, if that is in fact the case, Barbara, would you mind reading those questions if they do exist?
Okay, we have one. How do we know what is in the database now? What do you look for to expand that knowledge?
So thanks for that question. That's a good question, because I think, and an important question, because if you want to see what's in the database now, I believe we have a link in there, but you can look at the Farm Financial Database, FBMB. FBMB does have a fair amount of types of crops and livestock that are presented there. We are looking for, as you can imagine, we have a lot of what might be considered to be sort of the traditional crops, corn and beans. We tend to have a lot of information on that, as well as some cattle, particularly beef cattle, as well as hogs and poultry. that would certainly add to the database, maybe in a more of an incremental way, but also we're looking for something that might be a little bit more different. Some of the specialty crops particular, where we don't have that type or do not have as much of that financial information within the database at this point. So again, you can go to the Center for Farm Financial Management, which happens to be at the University of Minnesota. The University of Minnesota has sort of manages or maintains the farm financial database. You can certainly look into that and see what is existing there. But certainly, if you have something that looks to be a little bit beyond sort of the normal or traditional or larger crops that are produced, crops and livestock that are produced in the U.S., you can certainly look in that database and see something that may not exist, and perhaps you have it. Perhaps you're doing something that's a bit more unique. And we also could be look for something that in different geographic regions of the U.S. that are not represented as well. So hopefully that answers that question. If not, feel free to ask it again, and hopefully I can give another response to you.
I've posted that link in the chat as well, Keith.
Oh, thank you.
The next question. Good morning. This question relates to the data management. Is there any USDA NIFA guidance about whether or not the submission of producer data to FBMB is subject to IRB submission? We want to make sure that we are compliant if necessary, but don't want to create extra hurdles or work if this is already been answered at the program level.
Yeah, this does not require sort of an IRB. I want you to read that question for me one more again, because there's some very good points there. I want to make sure I'm answering this precisely. Are you on mute?
Thank you. Is there any USDA NIFA guidance about whether or not the submission of producer data to FBMB is subject to IRB submission?
Okay, stop right there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. No, I don't have any guidance at this point on that, but in terms of submitting to the database, once one is awarded or receives an award to that your proposal is awarded, we can certainly talk in much more detail about the IRB requirements, but I don't suspect, or I don't believe that there's very much from a database standpoint that would require an IRB. However, again, if your project is in fact requires an IRB, or if your proposal is awarded rather, then I think we could have some more further discussions about that in terms of how we might be able to address any IRB issues that there might be. And is there a second part to that question?
The following just said, we want to make sure we are compliant if necessary, but don't want to create extra hurdles or work if this has already been answered at the program level. Okay.
I think as well, if you would like, you can also arrange some time with the program staff, myself and Jessica Turner included. We can probably even get even more detail with the question, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that you'll have any issues with IRB and being in compliance with the national database. Any other questions?
That concludes the questions in the Q&A and in the chat at this time.
Okay. We also can pause just for a moment if anyone would like to ask a question by using the by coming off camera if you choose to, or to just be able to use your microphone, open your microphone up and ask questions. We'll pause a bit for that, just to open up the opportunity. And perhaps there may be some other questions that could come through in the chat as well. Okay, well, thank you. There does not appear to be any more questions in the chat session. And again, there's no one's opened up their mic to ask questions in that way as well. And again, if you have any questions, again, you can certainly reach out to myself or Jessica Turner correctly here. And we'll do our best to get you an answer related to the questions that you have. Thank you.